Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Two Rivers Tuesday. This is our podcast where we talk about things from our church family and continue the conversation after Sunday's sermon. I'm here with John Teague, who just gave me a funny look.
It wasn't a funny look.
You gave me a brow.
I gave you a brow.
Or one raised brow.
I do this all the time, and I'm very unaware of it. and it might be that it is actually revealing the deepest things of my heart and mind, but I don't even know those things. I'm unaware. But actually, I was just trying to be super careful about putting my coffee mug down on the table because Jesse has scolded us in the past that like the microphones pick up everything.
We don't want to be slamming it down.
Yeah, that's right. Slamming it down. Yeah.
Do you know what I hate is the metal water bottles that don't have like a silicone thing on the bottom. How do you feel about those?
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, because like you put them down or they drop or whatever, and it's just that metal ting when it lands.
Yes, I have like
awful.
Such sensitivity to that specific noise.
You know, lately, speaking of water bottles, I carry around like a 48 ounce like Nalgene water bottle, and huge. I love it because I drink a lot of water and I don't have to fill it up as much. But goodness, that thing has so much water in it. If you knock it over in the middle of the night, you basically flooded the bedroom. And that happened to me last week.
Flooded the bedroom.
It was awful.
Terrible.
I was a guest in someone's home, and I was sleeping in a king size bed all by myself, and they had those like huge like wide king size pillows.
Oh, wow.
We don't have those at home, and I sleep pretty close to the edge of the bed, no matter how big the bed is. Mm-hmm. And so when I shifted at some point in the middle of the night or early hours of the morning, and my this huge king size pillow knocked over my water jug, which is basically what it is, and it was full, and 48 ounces of water just went flooding into the bedroom.
Wow.
And so I'm having to turn the light on in the middle of the night, and it was just
towels.
Like good rest and sleep was over.
Wow.
It was so much water.
Was it not closed?
No, I had it open.
That's on you. You got to close that thing.
Well, it's a screw top, and I didn't want to have to like, in the middle of the night, if you're thirsty, the less you have to do, the more chance you have of staying asleep.
Wow,
And I think I got this from my wife. I got this from my wife because she's really funny in the middle of the night. If she has to get up for anything, if you ever see her, she doesn't open her eyes. She's gonna kill me for this.
I have the same line of thinking.
Okay.
Where I'm like,
if I can keep my eyes closed most of the way,
yes,
I'll stay asleep.
Yes, you just try to keep yourself in that like half sleep mode so you can go right back into it.
I'm not sure that's how it works, but whatever. I mean, that's what I thought of for my water bottle. I mean, and anyway, I flooded the place. It was awful.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay. You ready to talk about Sunday?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We started a new series on Sunday. Tell us a little bit about what this series is all about.
The series is called Taste and See, Meditations on the Goodness of God. And that comes from Psalm, is it 34?
That's what I was thinking.
34:18 maybe? I may be wrong on the address there.
Jesse's going to help us.
Jesse's going to look it up, but it says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. And October was a really hard month. It was a challenging month for us as a church family, and we're continuing to walk that hard road of grief. And so I just felt like we needed to pull off the road. We've been walking through the Sermon on the Mount, the series we've been calling The Way, and just felt like we'll get back to that because there's some important things for us in that. But I just felt like we needed to stop while we were grieving and just really meditate on some of the truths of God that help us to taste and see that he is good. And so that's what we're doing this month in November.
Yeah. I think I am looking forward to this series because I know it's what I need. And so that's what I appreciate about you just being sensitive to what we need as a church family right now. Like it would have been easy to just like rush right back into like what we had planned. But I think it's good that we're willing to like change course and be aware of like where we are and what we need and listen to like what the Lord wants to speak to us specifically for this season. So I'm just excited about being assured and being comforted in who God is, and I'm thankful for a leader who's willing to like give us what we need. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. So within this series, we are specifically wanting to lean into the practice of journaling. So
Yeah.
tell us why you wanted to do that.
Well, I think journaling is a wonderful practice. I journal. I'm a journaler. I journal. And I've done it different ways throughout the years, but I've probably been journaling since I know I have journals, like moleskin journals from our first years of marriage, but I think probably even before that I've got all kinds of journals that I just fill up with things that I may or may not ever look back on, but it just helps me to process what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm reading in God's Word, and the act of writing it down for some reason just helps me because my mind goes in a million different directions. And even sometimes when I'm praying, I have a hard time just sticking with it if I just close my eyes, because before I know it, like I'm off in some other, train of thought. And sometimes just writing out my prayers or even typing them out. If I've got a digital journal now, and that just is really helpful to me. And I love that I can go back and read those things and see where God has been leading me.
How often do you journal?
Every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so walk me through what it looks like. How do you do it?
How do I do it? Well, for me, it sometimes is sometimes I start with a prayer. Sometimes I start with a note about what's going on that day or that week. And then it usually almost always will include a verse that I read that day. Maybe it's one verse because maybe I read one verse that day. Maybe it was the verse of the day, but maybe it was like I'm walking through Psalm 119 right now, and it's like forever long. It's the longest chapter in the Bible, I think. And so I'm just, about 7 or 8 verses a day. And so I will make sure to choose one at least to write some things down about it.
Okay.
And that just helps me. It helps me to remember what I've learned. I said this on Sunday to anyone who heard the announcement, because everyone is dialed into the announcements,
Absolutely.
right?
It's their favorite part.
Yes, it's their favorite part of church. But you're 11 times more likely to remember something when you write it down. And so it helps me to remember things. And so then I take that verse or that word or that thought, and then I usually write some kind of prayer. And it might be just a summary, or maybe maybe I'm writing out the whole thing. Like, Lord, here's where I'm at right now. It's just a way to process what I'm thinking and feeling. And throughout the years of pastoral ministry and counseling people in different situations in life, sometimes one of the most helpful things for them to do is to journal, because it's like there's so much going on in my heart and my mind in this particular whatever is going on in this situation. And how do I even come to God with it? Well, begin to journal those thoughts and prayers, and you can go back and look at them and see how perhaps God is shaping and changing your thoughts and feelings, or it just helps you to be able to organize. Yeah, that's what I'm feeling.
Yes.
I can be my most honest there in my journal.
Yes.
Because it's just me and God.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a journaler, but there have been times in my life where I felt like I needed to journal. And in those times, every time I have like gone to journaling, it has been really helpful kind of for exactly what you're saying. There are 2 cases that like I can recall using it. One was when like my emotions and thoughts were just like so jumbled because of like the hurt of a situation. It was like a relational conflict. And so it was like, I'm not seeing my thoughts and feelings clearly. So I need to like get them on paper so that I can start to kind of like pray through them and sort through them and be able and see them more clearly so that we can like get to resolve in this conflict. And then another one was after like a really traumatic event in my life where like months later I could tell that was just like stuck. I was stuck because of how I was processing that. And so to take time to like journal through that was painful, but it helped me kind of like get unstuck. And I like tried to, as I journaled through that, tried to invite the Lord back into that memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that it could like rewire how I was responding to those memories, if that makes sense. So those were 2 cases where it was extremely helpful for me. But I'm trying with our whole church family to become a journaler during this series, and I've been kind of trying to lean into that just over the past 2 days. And one of the things I'm discovering that of like why it's not a practice that I lean into typically, and I'm wrong for thinking this, let me just be clear. The very reason that like I don't journal is why I most need to journal probably. And the reason is I usually don't journal because it feels really inefficient. And I am like I idolize efficiency in my life, and it causes lots of problems. But like to me, journaling is so slow. So I'm like that. I just don't have time to be that slow because I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. And so the wrong thinking is like, okay, if I journal, can journal 10 thoughts down. But if I don't journal, I could have 100 thoughts. Okay. And so more thoughts is better. And so I won't journal. But really like what I think is probably true and what I want to like lean into is that if I journaled those 10 thoughts would be like so much deeper and like more sealed into my heart than the 100 thoughts that I didn't journal. Do you think that's probably how it works?
I do actually think that's how it works. And there's no rule that even when you journal and you're only going to journal 10 thoughts, there's no rule that says you can't have 100.
Yes, that's true.
You know?
That's so true. I truly never thought of that.
So I have 2 thoughts. One is life group. Don't let me forget it.
Okay.
But the one that I'll share first is that I journal like, so I now keep I'm doing the journal that we're giving everyone. All right. So I'm writing some things down. I'm kind of double journaling right now. And for some people journaling is like super easy. And it's like, I can write and fill up pages and pages. And this little thing isn't even going to be enough for me in November. Okay. Well, or my journal entry is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines for today. That was my journal entry right there for today. And I wrote down 2 verses from Psalm 119 and then a word that stuck out to me and what it means, you know? So, and that's okay.
Yes.
Like whatever works for you, right? But I also keep an online journal, and there's an app for the Apple platform called Day One.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's plenty of journaling apps out there, but I have really enjoyed this app. Chris Jessen actually got me on this several years ago. I was very resistant to a digital journal because like now I'm on my device and you know, like who knows, like I'm like, oh, I need to read my Bible. Next thing I know, I'm like checking scores, you know, or whatever. But what I love about it is that I can go back. It's searchable, and I can go back now. I've got years on this thing. I've got 5 years of journal on this thing.
That's
and
cool.
I can go back, and I was just doing this the other day, and I was reading some things that I was processing and how I was processing some verses in the Bible as it related to some things that were really hard. And this was like 3 years ago.
Wow.
I was like, oh yeah, wow. You know, like, so there's just something, there's something cool about being able to do that. And, Day One also allows me to like put pictures and things. And so I love that because I'm not really on social media. And so I don't have some kind of like feed that's going to be like, hey, on this day you posted this on Facebook or whatever. But in my journal, it does do that. And so it reminds me of things. And so that's kind of where all my pictures go. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, Katie, look at this. On this day, like 4 years ago, we were hiking, you know, up Suck Creek Mountain or whatever, you know? So anyway, I really like that. So my second thought, sorry, that was a long first thought. My second thought was just like, I often ask people to share what has God been teaching you. And that can be a hard question to answer. For some people, that's real easy. Maybe they're thinking about it a lot. But I can, if I'm journaling, I can pretty easily, I could probably take this to my life group on Thursday, and I could answer that question, because I could look through here and see, this is what God's been teaching me right now. It's pretty clear right here in the pages of this thing, what he's been showing me.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's helpful in that regard.
Yeah.
Because you might have 100 thoughts, like, how do you even keep track of all those, but you wrote 10 of them down, and you can say, this is a kind of a snapshot of what it is the Lord's doing in me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that journaling can make you like a more concise person in letting people know what's going on in your world, and like, you are this way, so like, and I'm not this way, so this is like a case study for like journalers are better, because you you've already done all the like internal processing and work to know like, this is what I'm struggling with, and this is the sin that I can confess. So like, you've already even like done all that work.
Yeah.
And then you've already done all the processing work of like, this is what the Lord is teaching me, or like, this is what I need in this season. Whereas like, if you were to ask me that question, I would like on the spot do all the processing and then maybe arrive at a conclusion. And so I just think that there's benefit to people around you, because you like do the hard work of daily processing your emotions and your thoughts. And so then you can really clearly let people into that in an effective way.
Yeah. And I think I would just maybe put a bookmark on this. No,
okay.
Not a book. I don't know, whatever. Maybe if we're ending this part of the conversation, I would just want to say that journaling is not the end, right? Like, it's a means. It's just a tool to be used in your relationship with the Lord. And as you're letting him search your heart and reveal himself to you. So like, it's just a tool, so that's why we're like inviting everyone into it. It's not the right way. And it's not even that like those who journal are better than others, right? It's not like that. It's just that here's a tool. Let's all practice using it. And then if you don't want to use it after we're done, then okay, you know, but here's a tool like to even just practice gratitude this month of Thanksgiving. That would be a worthy endeavor.
Yes.
You know, just to have a list somewhere of all the things you're thankful for and try to like do it every day. That would be a worthy endeavor right there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think it just is a tool that helps you engage.
Yeah.
And so I think it's worth all of us leaning into and trying and seeing what the Lord does with it.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about the sermon?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What did Nick talk about?
Quicksand. That's what I remember.
Yes.
Which, by the way, I know like we need to get to something substantive, but I so resonated with Nick and he just said it and moved on. But like I was fascinated with quicksand too as a kid. And and Jesse was telling me this earlier, like he also was fascinated with quicksand. Is that a thing? Like, is that just a phenomenon for all kids? Like at some point as a rite of passage, you have to think about how you would escape from quicksand should you ever encounter it, or you thought you would encounter it a whole lot more in your life than you actually have, which is probably none.
Yes.
Right? Did you think about quicksand
a lot? I feel
like
it's in shows a lot. Yeah, okay. Like in kid shows, that's why we thought we would encounter it so much, is because that's like they're always getting stuck in quicksand.
Did writers of kids shows feel like that would be like an appropriate thing, like to get us thinking like we could just all of a sudden step into some mud or sand and and eventually it would slowly drown us? Yes. Like that sounds awful.
Yeah,
like,
it does. Have you ever been in quicksand?
No.
Never once?
Never once. Have you?
Really? I have been in like what I think I would say is quicksand.
No way.
But maybe quicksand is not even a real thing. I've been in like mud that is like is doing the same thing.
It's kind of sucking you down.
Yes.
I have probably been in some pretty sucky mud.
Yes. Yes, and it's not a good feeling when you're just like, my feet are stuck.
Yeah.
And you have to take your shoe off.
Or it takes your shoe off.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I've probably been in mud like that, but not like quicksand like in the shows.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. I wonder if that even exists.
You know what? Now that you mention it, there was like a reel. Did I just dream this? Or did was my phone listening to the sermon on Sunday? And like, then I saw a YouTube video or something, maybe Sunday night, that was someone showing you how to get out of how to get out of mud like this.
Okay, what do you do?
You have to you can't struggle and try to pull yourself. You have to slowly, incrementally try to pull up get one leg out and then get your knee up on top of it.
Okay.
And then slowly work your other leg up. And then you can kind of crawl out of it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Now everybody's more prepared.
Or someone just throws you a vine, because I feel like was it The Princess Bride? I feel like there were shows and movies that really got this stuck in our heads. I don't know if my kids ever think about quicksand.
Yeah, is that
I need to ask them.
A 80s and 90s thing?
Yeah, that's what I wonder.
Okay, why did you talk about quicksand?
Oh man, it was actually a great illustration. By the way, I won. Nick said you could win the prize if you could imagine in your mind what he was saying. And I could totally picture the whole thing in my mind, other than the me being Tom Cruise thing with jeans and no shirt on. But Nick was painting this picture of just trying to show us that we tend to think we know in a scene in our lives what is good and what is bad. And sometimes, and God sees a bigger picture. And sometimes what we think is good is actually not good. And what we think is bad and painful is actually God doing something in our lives.
Yes.
That's what he was trying to show, that pain, bad, someone's hitting him in the head with a branch because the fun, cool feeling mud in between his toes is actually quicksand. And he's actually, sinking. And so that was the point. That was my very, bad synopsis of that. But just to show us that we may not have the bigger picture. And sometimes when we see pain, when we go through pain, and it is painful and it is awful, but it may be that God is doing something good in it.
Yes.
He probably is doing something good in it. And one of the things he's trying to do, as we saw in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, is to help us not rely on ourselves, but to rely on God. And so, another thing that just real quickly that Nick said that I thought was so good is that really ever since the garden and the tree of good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we have been, as people, convinced that we can be the judge of what is good and what is evil. And that is ultimately for God. And he teaches us what is good and what is evil, but we don't always have the full picture.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love how Nick said it. He was just like, you have a problem. We all have just a brokenness in us that we assess the situation wrongly because we can't see the full picture. So we call the thing hitting his head bad, but it's actually the opposite. And so I feel like the sermon was just a comforting reminder that I'm not God. And so I don't get to declare what is good and what is not. He's the only one that can do that, really. And because he's God and he has the full picture. It reminds me of what is often really comforting to me in suffering is this song that's kind of written out of the book of Job, and it's called Where Were You? And it's just the song just kind of asking where it's God talking to us, when we question him or when we think we know what's good and bad, God's kind of oh, where were you when I formed everything? Where were you when I made lions? Where were you when I told the sea where to stop? Where were you when I put the stars in the sky? And it's just puts me in my place in a right way of just I'm not God. I wasn't there. I don't see the full picture. I don't know how the universe operates. I'm not God, and that's a good thing. But it just kind of helps me remember, I could be so wrong in my synopsis of that this thing is good or not. Yeah. And so just submitting to okay, but I know he is good, and so this I can trust.
Yeah. And I think we can all get in the boat on the idea that we all have room to rely more upon God than we do, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that was a big purpose for all the struggle that the Apostle Paul went through, of all people, right? And so I love that Nick just really debunked that whole like pop culture-y, prosperity, social media view of Christianity.
Yes.
It's not all happy. It's not painless. You don't
Yeah.
follow Jesus and everything is good,
Yeah.
or everything is easy. Maybe I
Yes.
should say it like that, pain-free,
Yeah.
God spares you from all, harm and bad.
Yes.
And it certainly wasn't the case for the Apostle Paul.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the sermon was good to just like give us permission. Like it's normal to doubt and it's normal to have these questions, and it's normal to process like who God is in light of our experiences in a broken world. And I think that's another reason why we wanted to encourage people to journal, is because like we have some heavy things on our hearts, and there is room to take those things to the Lord, and that is like a good thing to do, and he can handle it. And so that's again the journaling, like taking those questions, taking those heavy concerns and the things that are on our hearts and the doubts that we have, bringing all of it to the Lord and processing it as we journal.
A few Sundays ago, when we were all in shock and grieving the loss of Samuel Jessen, I said that we needed to wrestle with this grief and this sorrow and this pain and not rush away from it.
Yes.
Wrestle with it, not rush away from it, because we need to process it.
Yes.
Because God has something for us in that wrestling, revealing more of who he is and revealing to us what's going on in our hearts.
Yes.
Like, we need to wrestle with that.
Yeah, that's good. All right, in closing, I found it. It is Psalm 34:8. I'm going to read it over us. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. So I just want to encourage you this week to take refuge in him as you journal, recall his goodness, process your doubts, your concerns, the things that you're wrestling with, because he is a place of refuge and we can run to him.
Amen.
All right, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.
See ya.